Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. What is it that anti-Semites know about Jews that Jews don't? There is a secret about Judaism and about Jewry that anti-Semites know. And if we only knew it, we'd be amazing. The Mishnah tells us, the Gemara tells us, I think it's King David. It says, from my enemies, I have become wiser. Learn from your enemies. Your competitor, the one who opposes you, has actually a tremendous amount to teach you. You see, something about anti-Semites, very, very interesting, is that throughout the ages, they've understood that they've wanted to burn our books. They've wanted to burn our books. And I want to ask you why that would be. Why would that be such a big deal to burn our books?
Eliminate our history.
Wherever they successfully managed to burn our books, what happened eventually was that Jewish community disappeared. And this is a secret that the anti-Semites understood. That it's not only about destroying the future, Rob. It's more than that. It's more than that. And this idea comes out of today's Torah portion, which I'm going to be sharing with you in just a moment. But I want to give you a quick example. When the Jewish people were exiled from Spain and Portugal, from Spain they were exiled, thank you very much, in 1492, and they were exiled, they were kicked out of Spain with forced conversions or expulsion. And then many of them fled to Portugal, where in 1492, they were promised by the King of Portugal safe haven. But in 1497, the edict of expulsion reached Portugal as well. And instead of allowing them to actually escape, they were forced to convert on the docks. It was a bait and switch. The king told me to provide them boats on the dock, and instead of giving them boats, they were given a forced conversion. So the conversos, the Jews who were forced to convert in Portugal, were a very feisty breed. These were not the voluntary conversos of Spain. These were the forced converts of Portugal. At that time, there was a Jew by the name of Shmuel Usk, who wrote a book called Consolations for the Tribulations of Israel, in which he sought to comfort the refugees. In this book, he assured the Jews, the broken refugees. Can you imagine having to pick yourself up? Everything you own, your life, your assets, your possessions, everything. Men, women, and children just go live somewhere else at short notice. Can you imagine how difficult that would be? He assured them in his writings that God was with them and that miraculously all would end well with Mashiach. It's quite a beautiful read. He published a book in Italy, in Ferrara, in 1553. But the church banned and burned the book until 1790. Can you imagine? It was published in 1553. For 240-something years, this book was illegal, it was burned, and it was banned because they understood that the secret to Jewish survival has got everything to do with our books. And I want to give you the flip side of that. When the Romans were destroying our temple, or about to destroy our temple in the year 69 CE, it was one man's courageous negotiation that managed to allow Judaism to continue. I'm talking about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who managed to smuggle his way out of the besieged city of Jerusalem through the intense internal politics. And as he made his way to Vespasian, the general, future emperor, who was laying siege to Jerusalem, he won the grace of the general, but he basically told him a prophecy that he was about to become the emperor. And that became fulfilled within a few minutes, a short while of the rabbi letting him know. Imagine somebody comes over to you and says, by the way, you're going to be the next president of the United States. And you look at him like, what? And minutes later, you get an announcement, you've been summoned to become the next president. It was a very favoring moment for Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It helps when you have prophecy. It's good for negotiations. So what happened here is that he offers Vespasian, the future emperor, now says to him, "I'll give you whatever you ask for." So what he asked for three things, but one of them, the most important one that he asked for, was Yavne v'chachameha, Yavne and her sages. I ask for safe passage for the sages of Torah in Jerusalem to go to Yavne, the city of Yavne, and study Torah there to be protected. And the Roman emperor didn't think much about it. The general didn't think much about it. Big deal. So a bunch of rabbis with a bunch of old rabbis with books, no problem. Go to Yavne. You got my blessing. What happened was that what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was doing in that moment is that he was essentially navigating the course of the future of Judaism from a religion that was centered on a geography to a religion that was centered on a philosophy. All other nations that were conquered by the Romans disappeared. They were swallowed up because they took their land, they immersed them into their culture, and they were gone. But the Jewish people were never surrendered. They never assimilated into the Roman culture because they always had the Torah to define them. And that is the opening of this week's Torah portion. I'd like you to see it on page 800. Okay, quick welcome to Rocco's mom. You can't know what they know. You are not them, says Karja. About the anti-Semites, actually, we do know what they know because they burned our books. And the question is, why did they burn our books? What do they want from our Torah? Let's see. Shalom from Western Australia. Thank you, David. The word Jew is not an ancient word. It's the fourth coming from the 16th century. Oh, my God. Sir, I don't know where you're getting this information from. The word Jew is actually 3,800 years old. Yeah. Judea is the name of the land, and Jehuda is the name of the kingdom of David. So whatever. Okay, we have a whatever anti-Semite, I think. Anyways, take a look. Page 801. Page 801 in the book. The Torah starts like this week. It's a double Torah portion. The second portion begins here on page 800, 801, and it says, "If you advance in the knowledge." Well, I'm going to read it directly from the original Hebrew. If the first verse only. If you walk in my statutes and you keep my commandments and you fulfill them, right? You walk in my statutes, you keep my commandments and you fulfill them. Take a look at all the good stuff that's going to happen. First of all, you'll have money. Continues. I'm going to read the bold in English. I will give you rains in their time. That's nice, right? Mm-hmm. And the yield and the land will yield its produce. You know what that means? That means your 401k will yield its dividends, right? That's good. The tree of the field will give forth its fruit. Threshing will occupy until the grape harvest, and harvesting the grapes until the sowing. Right? You will eat your food to satiate yourselves. You will live securely in the land. I mean, that's really good stuff. I'll grant peace in the land. Wouldn't that be lovely? You will lie down there. There will be no cause for fear. I'll even remove all beasts from the land, and no foreign army will even pass through your land. You will pursue your enemies. They will fall before you by the sword. 5 of the weakest amongst you will pursue 100 of them, and 100 of you will pursue 10,000 of them. Your enemies will fall before you by the sword in a miraculous way. So basically, here's what it means. It means that if we okay, we have a heckler. Okay, fine. The truth is that what it's saying over here is that the Torah is telling us that if you walk in my statutes and you keep my commandments and you fulfill them, you'll get money and peace. That's a really good deal. Money and peace, prosperity and peace. But what does it actually mean? So Rashi is going to ask the question. If you look at Rashi, it's in the middle of page 800. It's in the Rashi letters, middle of page 800. If you walk in my statutes, Rashi says, I'm doing this in the original Hebrew because it's not translated. Could this possibly mean? It's right in the middle of the page. Yeah. Could this mean the fulfillment of the mitzvahs? If you walk in my statutes, could this mean the fulfillment of the mitzvahs? It can't mean that, because that's the next phrase. What it says next is, then you fulfill and you keep my mitzvahs. So obviously, it's already mentioning, therefore, the fulfillment of the mitzvah. So what does it mean now in the first phrase when it says, if you walk in my statutes? Rather, Rashi says, Mani Mekayem, Hamani Mekayem. So how do I interpret if you walk in my statutes, that you will sweat in the study of Torah? That's what it means. It means that if you toil in the study of Torah, and if you keep my commandments, that's when you'll get prosperity and peace. Right? Now, the question here is, why? Why is it that Torah is such a big deal for us? Why is it that the sweating in Torah study, why is it such a big deal to sweat in the study of Torah? Big deal. What would be such a terrible thing if you study Torah in your lazy boy armchair as opposed to a hard wooden bench? Why do you need to be sweating in the study of Torah? Is it such an important value for us that when it comes to Torah study, we should be toiling? We should be sweating? It should be difficult? I mean, think about this. Is there any part of your life in which you aspire to work hard? As Americans, is there any part of our lives that we, as an ideal, aspire to struggle? I don't think so. I think we live in a generation today where if a website takes more than 5 seconds to load, then we're starting to have a meltdown, right? Instant gratification, instant oatmeal, right? Instant baby food, right? Everything's instant. We don't have patience for anything. You know, in the olden days, you have to go see your friend. It would be like a day and a half trip to see him and a day and a half trip back. It was like a week-long experience, right? Today, you want to see your friend, you text him. God forbid to give him a call. Take their time, right? I mean, who wants to struggle? Who wants to struggle? Yet the Torah here is telling us, no. If you struggle, it's not enough that you're learning Torah. You have to be struggling in your study of Torah. How do you struggle in the study of Torah? It means that you do more than you're comfortable with. That's what it means. Right? It means
you shouldn't enjoy.
No. It's not what it means. It doesn't mean that you should struggle in a negative way. It means you should struggle in a positive way. So in other words, don't struggle as a painful experience, but rather struggle as an educational experience by forcing yourself to do something that you're not comfortable with. So for example, I'll give you an example. So people will say, I'm not interested in this piece of Torah over here because it's got nothing to do with my life. This week's Torah portion, Rabbi, I'm not coming to shul because it's about dermatology, or it's about animal sacrifices, or it's about some part of my life that I'm not comfortable with, so I'm not coming to shul. You'll talk about charity, you'll talk about honoring your parents. In fact, I don't like my mother, I'm not coming to shul this Shabbos, right? This would be a person that only does what he's comfortable with. I ask a guy to lay tefillin, and he says to me, why should I lay tefillin? I'm not comfortable with it. And I say to him, perfect. You're not comfortable with it? Then that's exactly the reason why you should do it. Because if you do it when you're not comfortable with it, then you're going out of your comfort zones for Hashem. You know what's going to happen? Hashem's going to go out of his comfort zones for you.
So we should lay tefillin because we're comfortable with it.
No, you should do more than tefillin. You should say, I'm ready. I'm already laying tefillin, right? Right? I'm already laying tefillin. So what am I going to do now? Now I'm going to do something extra. I'm not going to settle on the status quo. I'm going to say, look, I'm already studying the Chumash every week. So what am I going to do next? Rabbi, you know how many people come to me and say, Rabbi, what should I study next? So many people ask me this question. What should I read next? Which book should I be studying? You asked me that question recently, and I gave you something to do, right? There's guys in this community, people in Mirasol, that are studying volumes of Torah study. You wouldn't even notice because they're part of the club. They mind their own little business. They do their thing. But behind closed doors in their privacy of their home, right at the crack of dawn or after dusk, what they're doing is they're studying Torah out of their comfort zones. And this is what we're supposed to be doing, right? So it's interesting as a value, as an ideal in the opening of this week's Torah portion, that the Torah says, if you struggle in the Torah study, that's when you'll reach peace and prosperity. By the way, this is a very good deal. It's a letter I have from the Rebbe. The Rebbe writes to somebody, you worried about making a living. Why are you worrying about making a living? This is what the Rebbe says to him. Why do you have to worry about making a living? It says explicitly in the Torah here, that if you toil, if you struggle in the study of Torah, then God will take care of your money, right? So instead of worrying, instead of struggling to eke out a living, how about you struggle in your Torah study, the Rebbe says to him, and then God will provide for you. Isn't that interesting? Wait, look at it.
I would like you to point out to me where the word struggle appears, as opposed to advance. There's a difference between advance.
Okay, we have another heckler. Okay, fine. Well, I made sure to point out to
you
you.
to make up a,
I did make sure to point out to you that I was quoting it straight out of Rashi. I was quoting it straight out of Rashi.
well, I'd rather you quote it out of the Torah. With all due respect to Rashi, not everybody agrees with Rashi.
That's a big statement. Not everybody agrees with Rashi.
What?
When Rashi,
Who's Rashi's?
Rashi was known, it was known and accepted by all Jews everywhere. There is nobody that disagrees that says, no sound opinion. Sorry, no sound opinion. No, there's no opinion in Judaism, okay, that has that actually knows what they're talking about. I'm not talking about people that go to FedEx Kinko's and print themselves a certificate that says rabbi on it, right? Rabbi Jessica McDonald decided that that Rashi is not reliable, that's not a reliable source, okay? But there's no true Torah personality that does not accept the fact that Rashi was written with divine inspiration. Okay, so it's called Ruach HaKodesh, that a divine spirit infused into his writings. Now, Rashi's writings in general are a collection from the Talmud and from the Medrash, right? In general. So it doesn't say the source right here. It might be here. It might be this one. So let me just check if it's in this one, the actual source of this Rashi, because it's not printed in our Chumash. But let me see if it appears here, perhaps, because this is a Chumash that actually specializes in Rashi. Let us see. Hold on. Nope, it does not. Not in this one.
Because when you use the word struggle, you turn people off. If you say advance, as it does in the
so you just don't like my terminology. Okay.
That's different.
Let me think a second.
Because then it's just trying to do a little more than you did yesterday, trying to become a little bit more observant, to understand a little bit better. That's a big difference than saying, you know what?
Look, the exact translation, amele means to toil. Amele means to toil. It's the exact translation of this word. That you should be toiling in Torah. I interpret toiling to be struggling. Or maybe sweating. Right? You know, the Rebbe gives us an example. The Rebbe gives us an example like this. He says, you know, we call divine service avoda. The word avoda in Hebrew means work. So your divine service is supposed to be a work. What does that mean? It means many people have this approach to work, which is like this. They say, I'm going to work. So I'm going to work because it's important. So I'm going to get up early. I'm going to go sleep late. I'm going to be thinking about it. I'm going to be having lunch meetings. I'm going to have business meetings, business trips. I'm going to be thinking about it all day. I'm going to be blah, 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 blah. Right? Work. But when it comes to my spirituality, what do? Peaceful. Don't push, Rabbi. Not too hard, right? Is the Kiddush a nice Kiddush? Okay, I'll come. Do you know what I mean? There's a different paradigm here. When it comes to work, I'll do whatever it takes. When it comes to shul, only if it fits into my schedule. Only if it's raining on the golf course, then I'll come, right? Exactly. So the Rebbe points out and he says, your divine service is got to be an avoda. It's got to be a work, which means you have to relate to your spirituality, your prayer, and your study with the same commitment as you do to your making a living, right? It's an interesting concept, right? But without getting stuck on the nuance, I'd like to develop this idea further. So this concept is developed by Rabbi Akiva, who gives us a beautiful analogy. You know, there's a story of, I think his name was Pappus, in the days of the Romans. You know, Rabbi Akiva was a survivor of the destruction of our temple in 69 CE. So at that time, the Romans, I believe it was Hadrian, Emperor Hadrian, who rose in the year 120s CE. He instituted a terrible decree upon the Jewish people, especially after the Bar Kokhba revolt of 132 to 135 CE, when the Jews established an independent Jewish state in the land of Israel, under the very noses under the noses of the Romans. So the Hadrian doubled down on the Jews, banning Shabbos, banning bris, banning the Jewish calendar, banning Torah study. So Rabbi Akiva then was studying Torah. So Pappus comes over to Rabbi Akiva and he says to him, how dare you study Torah? You're putting your life in danger, and a Jew is not allowed to commit suicide. Good point, right? You're going to get killed. Says Rabbi Akiva to him. Rabbi Akiva says to him, yeah, I think my headline today is attracting so much anti-Semites. My headline was, What anti-Semites know the Jews don't. Just attracting the wrong crowd here. Okay, interesting. So, Rabbi Akiva says to this Papus, the Jew, he says, I'll give you an analogy, a metaphor of a fox who comes to the river and he sees the fish in the river and he says to them, fish, why do you have to run around darting back and forth in the river, running away from your predators? Why don't you come with me? Live with me on dry land. I'll protect you, says the fox to the fish. What are the fish going to say to the fox, says Rabbi Akiva to Papus? What would you say if you were the fish? Velvel.
I would say, you're on live, right?
Yeah. Okay, censored. All right, beep. Fine. So Rabbi Akiva says, of course, it would be absurd for the fish to respond and say, yeah, good idea. Let's go live with you. Because if they go in the dry land, they're for sure going to die. In the water, they might die. So too, said Rabbi Akiva, the Torah is our life, like the water is the life to the fish. Kiheim chayenu, for they are our lives. The words of Torah are our very life. This is the essence of Jewish existence, is Torah. Without Torah, we're dead. We're like fish out of the water. In the water, when we're studying Torah, maybe we'll die, maybe we won't. Maybe the predator will catch us, maybe the predator won't. The Romans, yes, no, maybe. But when it comes to us leaving the water, when we abandon the Torah, we say we're not going to study Torah anymore. Now I'm for sure going to die because I won't have any air. I won't have any ability to breathe anymore, right? And this is also hinted in the word bechukosai. If you want to see maybe this is your answer. Look in the text. So take a look in the text. You got the book with you? You see the second word, the name of the portion? Im bechukosai. You see the name of the portion?
Yeah.
Bechukosai. What does the word chukosai mean? What does chok mean?
Laws that we don't understand.
So chukosai means my decrees, right? But there's three different words to describe laws. You can say mishpat, you can say idut, you can say chukim. Here, the word for laws is bechukosai. Now, the word chukosai is a very interesting word. It's a decree, right? It's a very interesting word because it also means engraving. The same word means decree and also means engraving. In Hebrew, now Hebrew is not a language like English. English is English is a language of social consensus. Like a bunch of people just decided that CHAIR is the thing you sit on. Okay, let's do it. From now on, CHAIR is what you sit on. But in Hebrew, every single word is precise. It's like a mathematical equation. Everything fits in perfectly. So when you have two words with the same meaning, it's because they're related. So when you have the word decree and the word engraving in the same word, chuk, lachkok means to engrave, and means that it's connected. What is the relationship that you should be having with the decree, with the written decree, with the law of Torah? It should be one which is engraved, not like a relationship of parchment and ink, which is essentially two separate entities. And this is, by the way, the reason why you have to check your mezuzahs every 3 years at the very least. I remember here once we checked our mezuzahs. We live in Florida, and in the baking sun of Florida, I checked out the mezuzah here in the front door of the shul. And as I opened the mezuzah, which was in the baking hot sun, the letters jumped off of the parchment. I've never seen anything like it. Whole entire letters jumped off because they baked in the sun, and the letters were now separate. They fell into my fingers. Right? When you have a writing ink on a paper, it's two separate entities. There's the ink and the paper. But when you have engraving, you know what it is? The writing and the written upon is the same exact entity. You cannot ever differentiate between the letters and the parchment. That is the degree of the relationship that we have to have with Torah. And I challenge you to consider what kind of relationship you have with Torah. Is Torah something that you kind of know a little bit? Maybe you know a little more. Maybe you know a lot of Torah. But essentially, you're two separate entities. Or is your relationship with Torah such that you and Torah are indifferentiable, indistinguishable? Like this lady, she comes to the rabbi and she says, Rabbi, I know what to do. My son's lost his mind. What do you mean? Says the rabbi, I'm so sorry to hear that. Maybe he needs a psychiatrist. Like, what happened to him? I don't know. He's doing crazy stuff. He's waking up early in the morning. He's rapping to fill-in. He's running to minyan. He has to catch a minyan 3 times a day. He's worrying about what he eats, kosher. And then 7th day, doing any work, turns his phone off. And everyone does crazy thing. So the rabbi smiles. The rabbi smiles and he says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, man. You know what? I want to tell you a secret. I'll do the same thing. So she looks at him. She says, Rabbi, yeah, but that's your job. He really means it.
He really means it.
You imagine reaching that level of connection. of intimacy. That's the connection that we're supposed to reach when we study Torah. Maybe that answers your question, Rob, about when the Torah says, if the Torah becomes one with you, and that's not going to happen through casual armchair reading, right? If the Torah becomes one with you, now you're going to get peace, and now you're going to get prosperity. By the way, this is why you're supposed to, when you study Torah, you're actually supposed to experience pleasure. You're actually supposed to experience
That's what I'm
pleasure.
confused with sweating.
Nice, because you brought that out. It's beautiful. You said that.
I know.
There's like a whole war going on here in the comment sections. It's funny.
You're not dealing with a chimp.
So, oh my God.
I don't know, Rabbi.
Yeah. So I want to tell you. So Rob, or so Velvel, you said that when it says you're supposed to struggle in Torah, when Rashi says you're supposed to struggle in Torah, it means you interpreted that to mean that you're supposed to. It's like supposed to be annoying. It's supposed to be miserable. No, that's not what it means. It means like when you work, right? Like I'll give you an example. I've never worked a day in my life. I've never worked a day in my life. Why? Because I love what I do. Right? So in that sense, I've never worked. I jump out of bed in the morning. I'm so excited about what I do. That doesn't mean I don't work hard. Right? I remember meeting a valet guy once, and he asked me what I do, and I said, I'm a rabbi. So he asked me, do you like being a rabbi? I said, I love it. So he says, then that's not a job. I said, okay. Is there something wrong with liking your job? Like, yeah, I said, it's a calling. Maybe it's a calling. Maybe it's not a job. But it's interesting, right? That your study of Torah should be such, your relationship with God should be such, where it's a true pleasure. Because, not because you're taking it easy, you're pushing yourself hard. Like when you make money, when you make a living, right? When you run your business, maybe you enjoyed what you did, right? Hopefully you enjoyed what you did, right? So you took pleasure in what you did, even though you were still working hard, right? Don't think that it was a walk in the park, that it was a bed of roses, wasn't peaches and cream, but it was, you worked hard, but still you had pleasure. And that's kind of relationship we're supposed to have with Torah, where just like the letters are one with us, where the engraving is one with the stone, so too relationship with Torah is such that the Torah is like you're rediscovering your own essence, your own self. Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl was known that when he became physically fat, he was a Hasidic master, lived in the days of the Alter Rebbe in the early 18th century, early 19th century. Late 18th century. He was physically obese, and he would say that the reason I'm obese is because of the pleasure of saying Amen Yehei Shemei Rabba Mevorach to the answer in the Kaddish, by saying Amen, blessed be his holy and glorified and sanctified name forever and ever. In other words, it's interesting interpretation, about how he said that. But he would say that he became physically fat because of the pleasure that he took. Like, I guess like a person who's eating a lot of food.
I should stop saying, I love saying.
Yeah, maybe that's the reason that you're a little bit, maybe that's your tell you what. Now you know, because, now you know. And don't stop. Don't stop. It's a good thing. Good thing. Yeah, Legend, if you got a question, go for it. Ask me a question. Good. So let me finish this up, guys. I want to tell you something also very interesting. When the Jewish people, I want to tell you, folks, two things about Torah. I want to wrap it up here with two things about Torah. I want to tell you two things, guys. First of all, when it comes to heaven, when you go, where you go to heaven? When you go to heaven, how do you know which room you're going to get?
Make reservations.
How do you make a reservation? Good point. Yeah, you got to make a reservation. How do you make a reservation in heaven? How do you make a reservation in heaven? Studying Torah. That's right. It says that in heaven is a yeshiva shel mayin lo. It's a heavenly academy, and depending on how much Torah you studied in your lifetime, is what kind of room upgrade you're going to get. Are you going to get a room, with like in a barracks, right, with a third level of a bunk bed with a room with 30 people, or are you going to get your own private suite, with a couch and a room with a view and an ocean view? You got to sweat to get the suite. You see that? Right. Now, why is that? Why is that? The reason is because the Torah that we study is actually a protective shield. It's like clothing that protects us from the radiance that shines in heaven. I'll give you an example. So let's say you show up in a country, right? You show up in a country and you have no idea what the dress code is over there. You have no idea what the weather's like. You have no idea what the dress code. You have no idea what's going on. Or let's say you go to a party and you don't know what the dress code is. You showed up in shorts, but really it's a black tie tuxedo event, right? So what's going to happen? Where do you think they're going to seat you? That's a better example. Black tie tuxedo event, and you showed up in shorts and flip-flops. Where do you think they're going to seat you? At the head table?
Outside the men's room.
Yeah, maybe outside the men's room. You'll probably be back at the kitchen somewhere, right? Because it's just not appropriate, right? So the Torah is actually our garb. It's the clothing. How much Torah you studied is what kind of clothing. Did you show up to heaven in a tuxedo, or did you show up in your gutkis? Right? If you knew nothing, you maybe showed up in your gutkis or worse, right? And they say, listen, we want to give you a room, but you can't get in, right? So Torah is actually our protective layer. And I want to take it one step further. You know, when God spoke in Mount Sinai, you know what happened to the Jewish people when God spoke? They died. It was like an overwhelming revelation to the Jewish people, and their soul just expired. So God revived them. And the second time he spoke the second commandment, and the same thing happened. They're like, all circuits blew, short circuit, right? They all died, and God revived them back to life. And then from the last 8 commandments, Moses said, right? It was like, listen, it's getting a little too hectic for us. They said to Moses, maybe you should do the talking. Like he blew the microphone, So Tanya chapter 36 tells us that what happened when God revived the Jewish people. It says that there was a dew of resurrection, D-E-W, the dew of resurrection, the same dew that we're going to have when Mashiach comes. It says there'll be a dew that will resurrect the dead. What was the dew of resurrection? Tanya chapter 36 tells us it was Torah. Torah. God gave them some Torah infusion, like an IV, Torah via IV or something, which was able to give them the endurance that they needed to come back to life.
Torah is referred to as water, isn't it?
Torah is referred to as water, yeah, in Tanya chapter 5. But so what that means is that the Torah is actually the life of resurrection. The Torah is the life of resurrection, and if we could modify and adjust our relationship with Torah, not to look at Torah as something which is reserved for the rabbis, like American legal code is reserved for the lawyers. No. Torah is the birthright of every single Jew. Torah tziva lanu Moshe Morashaki Lat Yaakov. The Torah that Moses commanded us is the birthright of every single Jew, because it's not there so that you might be able to rule in case somebody stops you in the street and asks you what happens in an obscure case of Talmudic law. That's not why you need to know the Torah. You need to know the Torah because Kihem Chayenu, Torah is life. Without Torah, we're like a fish without water. With Torah, we're a fish in the water. When you have Torah, you'll have peace. You'll have prosperity. Make sure that your relationship with Torah is such that you are engraved, that you are one with Torah, that you've toiled. And once you've reached that kind of unity, you won't need to worry about making a living, because God Almighty will provide. Life's going to be amazing. Thank you very much.
I missed this one too.